Hi everyone, it's me, Tim, and today I want to do part 2 of game development caution.
Oh, I watched this, the
That
first
video
one.
got a lot of views and a lot of comments, and I
Yeah.
kind of want to talk about it. Yeah, I know the lighting's weird. It is just dark in Seattle all the time sometimes.
I need to
Today's
move to
a dark
Seattle.
day. So I just turned on the overhead light, see how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did the video on
Is this louder?
game development caution. And on the one hand, there was a lot of really good discussion about it. And that was great. I loved that there was discussion because that's kind of what the game development business needs. It needs people talking about things, talking about processes, talking about problems, just telling people this is what it's like so you can make an informed decision if this is the job you want to do.
Yeah, sure.
But there was a problem that ran through the comments on that video, and some of the places that picked up the video continued what I considered to be an issue with how that video was taken. And the problem was that they were focusing on individuals. People were listening to the stories I told and focusing on one of the individuals as the problem and not what the problem was I was trying to illustrate. I mean, I can give an example. There were a lot of people that said I was the bad guy, that I was the obvious bad boss, that I wasn't listening to the people who were working for me. I wasn't accepting their estimates. I was yelling in my office. It's funny. I know I kind of said...
Well, like, what, bro? Like, oh my God. So, yeah, for anybody who didn't see the first video, he was explaining why, like, some guy... Like, he asked basically some guy to change the toilet paper in a bathroom. This is not what it was. It was a game development decision, but it was like a pretty low-level one. And the guy said, yeah, sure, give me 3 to 5 business days. And so this guy said, I don't want to wait that long. I'm just going to do it in 5 minutes. And so he did it in 5 minutes. And then also he was just basically talking about like how they were being loud in his office, talking about some creative thing, and people were mad about it. It was 2 weeks. Oh, no, it was weeks. Yeah, he said it would take 2... He said 5 weeks. 5 weeks instead of a few hours. Yeah, yeah. And so, like, that's what it is. Changing out the time sync. It's making sure it doesn't break anything. I mean, sure.
We were yelling. We were just having a discussion.
Yeah.
And it bothered me when I found out, oh, people were bothering. I'll shut the door. We'll go do it somewhere else. But the point of that was more of a, people don't want to talk about issues in detail like that. Most of them just want to be told what to do.
Yeah, sure.
That's kind of the point. I wasn't saying that these people are bad. I'm saying the process that they find themselves involved in is bad. A lot of people were like...
I think that you have to have a level of accountability for a person, though, right? Because a person is part of the process. Like, I don't think that it's an either-or thing. I mean, I can't talk about every situation. I just think in general, like, yeah, there are people that fuck up.
Oh, you should have just fired some of those people involved. They didn't want the whiteboard up, fire. Gave you bad estimates, fire them. That's totally missing the whole point of the video.
What's the point?
And I'm torn because I think when I'm talking about things, I do better when I give specific examples. It illustrates it and kind of roots it in reality, and these are real problems that happen, these are real things that happen. But the problem is, people, when they focus on the wrong thing, it makes me think that they're like a doctor who, rather than trying to find out the cause of your illness, you're just being given pills to treat the symptoms.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like, oh, I've got this pain in my side, here's a painkiller.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted. I want to know why I have a pain in my side. I don't want a painkiller. Although when I had...
That's actually makes a very good point. He does. Like, he's making an incredibly good point. Because what he's saying is that the people that are making these decisions, it's not... And like he's right that it's not just individuals. Like, I think that it is individuals as well. But like these people are also a product of a system. And this system has them behaving in a certain way. It's the same as like, you know how I said achievement points, like having achievements in games cause people to play the game in a certain way. Well, I think it's the same thing at like a job. Because like how many of you guys have had a job where like they added some sort of productivity measure and then you stopped doing your job in the best way, and you started doing your job in the best way to maximize your productivity measurement device. Yeah, KPI, yep, key performance indicators, some sort of performance reviews, etc. So, like, he is right, is that these people that are doing these things, oftentimes, yes, they are a product of, a bad system. And they're just simply min-maxing the system. Because that's kind of what happens, is that whenever you have somebody who goes and they turn a job into a game, effectively, where you're min-maxing stats of like, how many are you doing per hour? What are you doing this per hour? Like, how often is this happening? Like, well, you turn, a job into a game and people stop doing their job and they start playing a game. I think it kind of makes sense.
The kidney stone, as soon as I found out it was kidney stone, I wanted all the painkillers they could give me. I was like, get science in the room. I need more painkillers. Mm-hmm. But similarly, saying, well, Tim, you're a horrible boss. No one will ever want to work with you. I agree. There's people who don't want to work with me. And probably some people on this channel who wouldn't want to work with me and I wouldn't want to work with them. A lot of people do. That's missing the point. There was a problem getting people involved in a way that I think is part of their job. That they should be thinking, I'm putting this feature in. Mm-hmm. Is this gonna connect right? Why are we even needed this? Nobody asked me why we needed that AI I suggested. It was needed because designers were blocked on testing combat. The suggestion I added, I thought...
I feel like that, in my opinion, is an indicator of somebody who doesn't really give a fuck about their job, though, right? Because, like, if a person doesn't even have enough interest in understanding how they fit into the larger puzzle, like, that's something that's completely internal. Like, they just simply want to do the bare minimum. Yeah. They gave up their job entirely. Yeah. You can't make people care. Or inexperience. Yeah, it could also be inexperience, badly trained, etc.
It was reasonable. 45 minutes of code connected in just 2 spots. 2 locations. Yeah. Through events. An event system that already existed. No unit tests. Quitting? No, well, how would this be extended? This code was designed to be thrown out. It served a purpose. I could do a whole thing on rapid prototyping, and maybe I will, but rapid prototyping just isn't a thing in the industry anymore. And it was hard to get people to understand. I'm just trying to unblock something here really quickly. You will still be scheduled to do the real AI when it's really going to go in a few more months. We just need the designers and level designers especially who are making encounters to be able to get a little better.
And this is like kind of what, because like I remember whenever I saw the first video for this and people said, oh, the reason they didn't want to do it is because it would break other stuff in the game. But if it was only done for a testing purpose, then that's not even relevant, right? Because if you're only doing this for the purpose of testing, then it doesn't really matter if it affects other systems in the game because it's just meant as a testing device. But they don't know that because they're not asking questions about it. And I think the reasons why people don't ask questions about it is because it's easier to just say, I can't do it. It's easier to assume that it's complicated and then, oh, I don't know, it's complicated. They don't care, yeah.
Feel for how those encounters will go. But anyway. Let's talk about a non-game example. Maybe if I illustrated this with a non-game example, it would make more sense.
Okay.
Let's say there was an intersection near your house. 2 streets intersected. And there were always accidents there. Cars are always running into each other there.
Sounds like they should make a clinic there.
A reasonable person might go, okay, are there trees or hedges?
No, you need a medical clinic at the intersection.
There? Maybe we need stop signs or a stoplight. Yeah. Or maybe we need to replace it with a roundabout. Those are reasonable discussions to the problem.
Not roundabouts. Those are socialist.
People asking questions about what could be the cause of this, and here are some possible solutions. Instead, how I see people talk about it is, oh my goodness, they should ticket everybody who has an accident there. And if you have more than one accident, you just get your license removed. That'll fix it.
Yeah.
Or they say, why don't we just reduce the speed on those roads and all the nearby roads to like 10 miles per hour?
Yeah.
Then there probably won't be accidents because people can stop in time. And even if there are, no one will get hurt.
Right.
Or they go, there's accidents there and people are getting hurt a lot. We should build a hospital right on the corner. So then when people get hurt, we can take them right into that hospital.
There it is.
And it's like, those.
See, I've played enough video games to where I know how some of these people think. Yeah, it's played a lot of video games.
Those
it's just the logic.
People think they're being reasonable and intelligent, and I'm gonna fix this problem of accidents at this intersection. But they're looking at the wrong thing. They're either punishing the people for having the accidents, or making it so that the accidents still happen, but the side effects aren't as bad, either in damage, or the accidents happen just as badly, but you've got something there to fix the people. It breaks my programmer brain that people think those are suggestions, reasonable suggestions to, there's an intersection with a lot of accidents. And that's how I feel like.
Well, I think there's also a lot of people, like, have you ever had somebody who, have you ever done, this is like actually a really good strategy, and I use this a lot of times whenever people want me to do something I don't want to do, is I massively overcomplicate the issue to become like an unsolvable labyrinth of problems. And like, you cannot possibly unravel, it's like a Gordian knot of problems that you just cannot even begin to figure out, like, what is it? Like, so it's like, if I have to drive, like, oh, I have to pick you up, like, oh, I've got to pick you up. Okay, well, oh man, I just got my license renewed and it's like in the mail, and like, my inspection is out, so I need to do that. I think I need to get gas, and like, honestly, man, my phone's not ready. I don't know really exactly where you are, and so I'd have to go ahead and look and see that. And like, there's also something else going on, right? And like, I am so good at making people realize that they don't have a chance to get me to do anything. Like, but procrastinate? Yes, like, I will put up the biggest smoke screen just so I can not move. I just want to sit there. Obfuscation, yes. Well, I can't do that, you see, because the microwave doesn't work. So, like, because like, now I've got to go to Home Depot, and I've got to figure out this microwave situation because, like, in the morning, right? Because, like, I read a study that said that you had to eat things in the morning. And so, like, you turn something totally around on them where, like, at the end of the day, all they wanted you to do was help move a sofa. But now they have to hear about your microwave. And so you punish them by even beginning to think that they could ask you to do something. You punish them by making them listen to like a 25-minute story. Yeah, tell a fucking story, exactly. Yeah, how to alienate everyone ever. Well, sometimes it doesn't work though, and they keep coming back, and that's the worst part. Now, also another strategy I used to use is that somebody would ask me to do something, and I would think about the timeliness of what the ask was, and I would respond to them slightly outside of the range in which that it was acceptable or they needed to have this thing done, which would make them think that I gave a shit. I just didn't see the message. But the truth is, I didn't give a shit, and I did see the message. So that way, they're not upset at me, but I also didn't have to do anything either. I would especially do this in Warcraft, for example. Like, whenever I would raid, sometimes I wouldn't want to do the beginning bosses because I already had all the loot from them. So I would put myself on standby, and I would log on. I'd tell people, oh, I'm here, but put me on standby. They're like, okay. And I said, call me if you need me. Well, they call me, and then as soon as I see they call me, I pull up one of their streams on incognito mode on my phone, or sorry, on my computer. Actually, at the time I didn't have the phone incognito or anything. I would pull it up and I would wait for them to try to get a response back from me, and then as soon as I saw them swap somebody else in and the person was summoned inside the raid, then I would respond. I would be like, oh yeah guys, I was in the bathroom, like, yeah, what do you need? I'm all here for the team. Meanwhile, I've actually just been sitting there watching porn for the past 30 minutes, and I knew everything that was happening. Like, I'm on an alt right now. I'm literally playing the game. I'm just on an alt. I'm just farming a boss on an alt. Like, because fuck them. And so I would do this for, like, literally years. And eventually they kicked me out of the raiding team. But it took a long time for them to figure this out. And in the process of that, I made millions of gold through carries. And I also got my best in slot gear. So really, winners win. Quiet quitting? Well, but it's like you have to be, like, very good at this. So, like, in terms of, because, like, I think Tim here might be being a little bit gracious to some of these people, but I actually think that it's a situation of what I like to call lazy fucks. And lazy fucks are a big issue. They can absolutely be a big issue. And there are a lot of people with us. That thing in my garage is going off again. I'm not even gonna worry about it. But anyway, no, it's fine. It's just that I think the fan's fucked up. I gotta go down. So see, like, watch, I'll do it. So, like, the fan's fucked up. I gotta go downstairs and do that. But, like, in order for me to go downstairs and do that, then, well, like, the garage is dirty. So then I have to figure out, like, how to get to the garage. And then I have to get to the the control board or the, the light switches, and then I have to figure out which one to turn off. And then after I figure that one off, then I have to figure out how to do this fan. I don't know how the fan's wired, so, like, how do I solve this problem, right? And so you could just immediately turn, like, a 5-minute solution into a 30-minute problem. And nobody wants a 30-minute problem. Yeah, nobody wants that. So you are the problem. Lazy, yes, but you make it out to where, like, there's just a situation where it can't happen. It's so silly. It's not silly. Not like, I'm telling you, like, this is how, like, nobody can ever get me to do anything because I can always figure out something else like that. I'll always figure something else out. It's, oh, I can't do it. That's it. You get your shit together? Well, I mean, no, not really. Why not just say no? Oh, that's what I do now. I don't do this as much nowadays. Honestly, usually now, like, I kind of got back into the habit because sometimes people would, like, just keep asking. And, like, at, like, a job, you have to kind of, like, play games with them because you say no, they might, like, fire you or something, right? But, like, with people like that, I just usually tell them no now. Yeah, I'm doing the exact same thing. We forgot what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Like, you forgot even I was watching a video, right? The problem solved. People don't really like whenever you just straight up say no. Yeah, that's what I do from now on, though. You have no idea how many people can relate to what you're saying because it's just typical ADHD behavior. I don't think this has anything to do with ADHD. I don't think there's a disorder for this. I think I'm just lazy and selfish. Like, yeah, there's not, like, a grand design. There's not a fucking, a psychologically studied thing. I'm just lazy and selfish. That's it. That's the bottom line.
People are responding to my stories. They're not thinking about what's causing it. They're looking at the symptoms and going, I can get rid of those symptoms.
Exactly. Like, what about the asphalt on the road?
And
what about the signage?
To put it in another non-game development analogy, let me tell you how I think of this channel, this whole channel, every topic. Every time I start and talk, this is what I'm thinking. I feel like I'm walking around a dark warehouse and I've got a flashlight and I'm pointing at things in the warehouse and I'm going, oh, look there. See those boxes? I want people to see them. I want to be aware of what it is they're seeing. And then if it's an issue, in a warehouse, maybe they can have some ideas of how to fix it. Now, good suggestions would be, hey, I didn't get a good perspective on those boxes. Can you stand in a different place and illuminate them? Perfectly reasonable answer. Or, hey, I have some ideas of where you should go in the warehouse. Some places that need the light shown. So we can talk about that thing.
Sure.
Perfectly reasonable suggestions. Instead, I get comments like, well, I get the, oh, you're stupid. I get that. worded in many different ways.
I don't think this is something. I don't think that that's his fault.
Or buy a bigger flashlight, you loser, which I don't get why anybody would say that. Or we'll just turn off the flashlight. Now there's no problems anymore. People have basically suggested things of rather than fixing the problem, they're making the problem not visible anymore.
Yeah, it's like there was one time I threw up on the floor and I put a magazine over it. And I also want to go ahead and dispel a rumor. There are people who say if you ignore your problems, they won't go away. That's completely not true. Okay? That is totally not true. If you ignore your problems, a lot of them will 100% go away. Like this is one of my best leadership bits of advice, especially for Warcraft guilds, is whenever two members have a problem with each other in the guild, I tell them I'm going to deal with it, and then I don't do anything. And 9 times out of 10, I never hear about this problem ever again. Yeah, I just straight up lie to them. And it works. What's on logic comparing games to life? Oh, it's people.
And then some people even go, well, you should just leave the warehouse. You should go to the indie warehouse next door. We don't have those problems. And I'm like, okay, but can you not see that there's still a big warehouse?
Teeth? Oh, you're right. That's a good point. Yeah, the problem was my teeth. I ignored them, and then they went away.
With people bumping around in the dark and having problems. Going to the new warehouse doesn't fix the old warehouse. I understand some of you are like, look, I didn't build this warehouse. I don't know how to fix the warehouse problems. I'm going to go over to the indie warehouse. I get it. But, I spent the last 40 years in that warehouse. I want to try to help fix some of these things.
Yeah, sure. I get it.
Or, even better, point out them so you guys can fix them.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, I kind of want the issues discussed so that people know what the issues are and agree what the issues are and then try to fix them. And that's the whole point of this, kind of. I want, in addition to me wanting you guys to go and make great games for me to play, which is a totally selfish reason, but I consider this channel a place for learning about game development topics and discussing them. And
I think that a lot of the reason why certain games have these problems is because people are lazy. And the reason why I think that is because there are things that developers say are impossible, and then the company loses money and they become possible. So it's just like crazy how that happens. It's like magic. Like, how is it possible that the thing that you said you couldn't do, now you're doing it? What changed? Well, it's because they were lying. That's why. It's absolutely possible. It's whether it's financially worth it or not. Well, it's not about whether it's financially worth it in a lot of cases. I just think that for a lot of them, they just don't want to deal with it.
some topics include problems that exist in the game industry. What I'm hoping is that people will focus more on treating the causes of those problems, and a lot less on just ameliorating the symptoms of those problems.
Right.
And as I said in another video about, hey, we've all got to agree that there is a problem and what's the cause of the problem and then the solution of the problem. That's kind of what I'm saying here. I see a lot of discussion about game development caution. I don't see a lot of suggestions on how to get rid of it. I see a lot of people saying, I don't think it's a problem.
I think one of the reasons why is because so many games have this like hyper-conservative mindset with making changes and interacting with players. And almost every single game that doesn't have this hyper-conservative mindset, I think is better because of it. Some examples I can use are towards the end of Shadowlands, whenever Blizzard would just do interviews with anyone, including myself. Another example is Chris Wilson with Path of Exile. And I think I can probably come up with a third one. Like Ashes of Creation, the game's not really out yet, not really an amazing example. But even like with New World, the developers are very outspoken and they're always willing to talk about and explain what their perspective on things is. So Yoshi P, yeah, there you go. So I think that one of the big problems that these game development companies have is that they almost act like they're a government and that the players are the citizens, whereas the developers should be the ones that are on the player's side. But oftentimes with a lot of these games, and I think this is especially true with live service games because they're monetized off of getting you to play the game longer, it kind of creates an adversarial relationship that the developers have with the players. And what that causes things to happen, what one of the things that causes to happen is that the players don't trust the developers. And on top of the players not trusting the developers are always trying to work in a direction that's not in tandem with the player. They're not trying to get to the same place. The developer has a goal that is secondary to the player. I think that live service games exacerbate this problem massively because of the way they're monetized. For example, in Elden Ring, this problem isn't as big of a thing because they just simply want you to enjoy the game. That's all they care about. They don't care about how long you enjoy the game, really. They just want you to get value out of the game. And this is the case with Armored Core, with Legend of Zelda, with Baldur's Gate, because you bought the game and then that's it. But especially with these games that are live service games or that have a lot of microtransactions, you create a situation where the developers are designing something and building towards something. Their goals are not the player's goals, fundamentally. And I think this is a problem like with like YouTube and streaming too, is that oftentimes like some streamers and some YouTube content creators, like one of the reasons why I think people fall off is because their goals diverge from the audience's goals. So their goals are to, express themselves and to do something that they enjoy and to be happy. And the audience's goals is to be entertained. And whenever these two things are misaligned, then that's a huge problem. And that's why you see people like, back in the day, Ice Poseidon and other streamers, especially IRL streamers, that would constantly up the ante for things. And eventually it just burns them out because that level of intensity is, it's stressful. It's dangerous in a lot of cases. And the audience wants to see that. And that's what ends up happening, is that you have that divergence, and whenever the divergence occurs, then you have the players that are resentful of it. They're angry at these people for not, Fuzi's another example, for not continuing to do it. It's the same as whenever people decide to stop playing a video game that they're very known for, right? Like how many League or WoW players do you know that like they play another game and their viewership, they were getting 1,000 viewers and now they're getting 80 viewers or 40 viewers or something like that, and they lose all of those people. And the reason why that happens is because it is a divergence of what the audience wants and what the streamer wants. And I think that, again, Filthy Frank, prime example too. Yeah, and I think it's totally okay if a person does that and they're fulfilled and happy whenever they're diverging and doing what they feel comfortable with, and they have a core audience of people who respect that and appreciate it. But the problem is that whenever you make that divergence, you can't expect everybody that's on the other side there to actually want to stick with you because they're watching you for something different. And I think this is a huge problem that games have, is that games are trying to be something either for the developers, like what I was telling before about how, like, I feel like some stories for games are almost like therapy for the people that are making the games, and they're not made with the audience in mind. They're made centered around the developer. They're self-referential around the developer's experiences and the developer's life story. And I think that that's okay in some cases. Like, you can use Lord of the Rings, for example. Samwise Gamgee is kind of like a character that Tolkien put in because of like his experiences in World War I and like a person who served under him. So the problem isn't necessarily that you're doing it. I think also the problem is whenever you're doing it and it doesn't align with what the ideals and the values of your audience is. So I understand that, yeah, this is a very long... It's a long-winded tangent, but I think it's very true, is that, the developers and the players have different goals. That's what it comes down to.
they're being this way because of fear of their job or fear of speaking out. Okay,
Yeah.
if that's the root cause of this, how do we fix that? And I don't think we fix that by firing people, because once you start going down that road, you end up...
Well, then you have a chilling effect on everything, and then nobody wants to change anything or do anything drastic because they're afraid of losing their job. Like, for example, the department my dad worked in at the IRS, he dealt with a lot more fraud than I did. Like, we very rarely dealt with, like, hard fraud, but he would deal with it with a lot based off of, like, the context of his job. And a lot of people didn't want to actually pursue fraud cases because guess what? The fraud cases are way more complicated, but they're weighted the same as the popular, the positive conversation or positive or non-fraud cases. So what ends up happening is that people just pass through fraud cases because they don't want to deal with losing points and putting their job at risk for doing their job better. Does that make sense?
A lot of very quiet
and it happens with a lot of people.
Rock the boat. Again, I still see game development caution as being a problem. I don't see it being solved with some of the solutions people are saying. In fact, most of those ignore the cause and are just going after symptoms. I think in the future, let's look more at causes.
I think that a big problem is just like a lot of companies have these very weird PR mindsets, and they're hyper focused on the PR for things. Like, for example, I'm sure Blizzard PR was very upset whenever Rod said the malignant tunnel thing. But it was funny. Like, nobody cares. It was funny. Like, it was stupid and it was funny. And I think that that's really what the issue is that you have people that are overly cautious, and their overly cautious nature takes something that's supposed to be a creative work of art, and it turns it into a product.
And that's kind of what this video is about.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
I talked a lot during the video, but I think that everything that he's saying is also very true. Is that, yeah, he's right, is that these people are a product of of a system. Like, that's what like, for example, I don't think all the Blizzard GMs nowadays, I don't think that they are lazy. And I think that to an extent they are lazy, though, right? Because, like, why would you not be lazy? Like, if you feel like, have you ever been in a job? Let me step back one more step. Have you ever been at a job and you have no problem going above and beyond because you feel like the job pays you well, it compensates you well, and you get treated fairly? You're like, you know what? They go the extra mile for me. They're good to me. I'm going to be good to them. Yes? No? For people saying no, I find that to be disappointing. But yeah, I think that's the case. I've been in a situation like that, and it was great. But the truth is that whenever you work as a GM, you're constantly under pressure based off of, performance reports and some sort of metric system that's probably made by a person who's never done your job. And guess what that does? Well, that's going to create a lot of stress. So the reason why GMs don't have GM jokes and conversations with players as much anymore is because of those systems. So those systems do affect everybody else. Does that make sense? It's not about the job, it's the character of the worker. No, I don't agree with you. I think that there are certain jobs that elicit a person's... It's very simple. I don't respect the job, or I don't respect a person that doesn't respect me. If a person shows me respect and treats me well, I am more willing to do that back to them. It's common sense. So, of course, there are some people that are going to be lazy or very hard workers no matter what, but I think there's a massive gray area in between those two extremes where you can motivate people to be hard workers and you can also motivate them to be lazy. So, whenever you create a system where, and I think parsing in WoW is a good example of this. Have you ever played WoW and somebody dies on a boss fight because they just wanted to stand in like a fire and do damage? Stand in a fire, DPS higher? You know, people that like try to parse as much as they can. Yeah. But I don't think that it's fair to say that it's entirely a management problem, because there are lazy employees. There are employees that are lazy. They don't do their work. They put in a minimum effort. Now, why are they lazy? Maybe some of that is the company's fault, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is their responsibility to, you know, fucking do what they need to do. Good YouTube short in the context of Blizzard manager incompetence and laziness. What's this?
So when I worked at Blizzard, I had to do a social engineering task where I had to hit customer support, and I had to get 50 questions answered. And let me tell you, I got my questions answered. I shouldn't have. That was the problem. They're not supposed to answer those. And one of the things that I found that was really interesting is people that had been there for 1 year were really, really hard to trick. But people that had been there for 5 years were really easy to trick. What have we learned? We've learned that training is the issue. Everybody that actually worked at the company got training in their first year, and then they never got training again. So they became complacent, exactly. The director of CS came, and he said, I want the names. And I said, I'm not giving you the names. You're just going to fire those people. And he goes, I'm going to go to your boss. I was like, do it. My boss is like, you got the names? I was like, yeah. And he goes, you going to give them to him? And I was like, no. And he goes, he's not going to give you the names, bud. And then I sat down and I was like, look, I'm not giving you the names.
My man.
Because if I did, you'd fire all of these people that are your best employees, the ones that have been here the longest. And in 4 years, you will have the exact same problem with the people that are newbies right now. The issue is not the employees, it's your training regimen. I sat down with him, we created a new 6-month training regimen, and guess what? I went back about a year later, did the same thing. All those people passed with flying colors. Not a single one of them answered my questions. So when I worked at Blizzard, I had to do...
There it is. Holy shit. Yeah, I think that's probably the best example of what this guy was saying. Yeah, that's a perfect fucking example. Absolutely. Let me go ahead and link you guys the video. We watched his first part 1 of this, and it was very good. And, yeah, it's unfortunate that guy doesn't still work at Blizzard. Absolutely.